Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Hit the bell, subscribe. We have new content coming out daily. Make sure you subscribe. God bless you guys.
Lance, I hear from some Christians, and you talk about this here, Unlocking End Time Secrets is one of the podcasts that you do on the Lance Wallnau Show. I hear from some Christians, Charlie, things look so terrible, they're not falling apart, they're falling into place. Jesus is coming next Thursday. What is the point to fight? Lance, how do you respond to Christians that emphasize eschatology to such an extent where they say, I'm done fighting, I'm done contesting for truth?
Well, that's just, frankly, and I don't mean to insult them because they're sincere people that would take the time to write, but what they suffer from is biblical illiteracy. Jesus said this, occupy till I come. Now, when you get words like that from a commander-in-chief who's leaving, departing, and he says, I'm coming back like MacArthur, I will return. And he says, meanwhile, occupy till I come. That's not the cue for you to be preoccupied with when he comes while you hide out in the basement eating soybeans and watching your favorite YouTube prophet. So the people that are retreating from the battle of culture, I would almost predict are the very ones who Jesus warns about, who there's 10 virgins when he comes back. They're all virgins. They're all believers. They're all virgin. Only 5 of them were ready when he returned. 5 of them had oil in their lamp. They had oil with them. Why? Because they were engaged. The other 5 were sleeping. So those that want to hide out, that want to anesthetize themselves, that want to go into, and California is like the grand poobah of this deception. We're just not going to vote and get involved with politics because the sooner things fall apart, the sooner Jesus returns. Well, that's not exactly right. Jesus says, occupy till I come. And then he says, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Go therefore and disciple nations. Break out what I teach as a worldview. Teach other nations. The mistake we made in America is the church isolated itself, focused on its own growth, its own spiritual empowerment, and the return of Jesus, while the secular world taught. We preached and they taught. We should have done what Jesus said. Preach the gospel and teach nations. We should have been in education, teaching worldview. We should have been in economics, teaching economics. Most of the progress of civilization, people don't get this, came out of the Reformation base of Europe. It came out of science. It came out from music with Bach to Newton. These were people of faith, Charlie. These weren't the enlightened God rejectors of Harvard. These were enlightened Christians who gave us the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the progress we have in America. So when I hear Christians say they don't want to get involved with the nitty-gritty of what you're doing right now, I see people that are forsaking the front lines of the battle where occupation is needed most.
So let me read here, Lance, and I'd like to have you respond. Andy Stanley wrote a book about not getting involved in politics. He writes, quote, the reaction of evangelicals to political and cultural shifts in recent years revealed what they value most. Lurking beneath our Bible-laced rhetoric, faith claims, books, and sermons is a relentless drive to win. But the church is not here to win, writes Andy Stanley. By every human measure, our Savior lost on purpose, with a purpose. It's bizarre. I don't really know how he could say that. And we are his body. We are not in it to win anything. We are in it for something else entirely. That something else is what this book is about. And so he argues here that the church should not get involved at all. He's a quote-unquote leading evangelical speaker. A CNN.com article says here, quote, I want to make sure I read this correctly and quote it correctly, that the evangelical church faces a state of emergency over politics and getting involved in politics. Lance Wallnau, your reaction to Andy Stanley.
The state of the American church faces a crisis over whether or not it's going to be under the influence of these false teachers like Andy Stanley, or whether they're going to be enlightened in time to protect themselves and their children from the loss of liberty. The problem with Andy Stanley is that they listen to the logic of what he says, that he has evaluated that evangelicals get engaged with political matters because of their desire to win. Well, let's say that you've got Al-Qaeda trying to break into the cockpit of the plane. You and your family are on your way to a vacation, but Al-Qaeda wants to crash it. Maybe winning for you is keeping Al-Qaeda from being behind the controls that will crash your future and your family. This is why we engage in every battle we get into. It's out of love for the passengers of the plane. It's out of love for our children. We aren't in it to win it. We're fighting for survival at this point. We're in the battle of the ages to keep the lights on for liberty and freedom of speech. When you've got Jordan Peterson in Ontario, Canada, having to put $40,000 a month up in legal expenses and being forced, in order to retain his license as a psychiatrist, to have to subject himself to social media communication training under the Trudeau government. When you have another pastor like Arthur Pulaski struggling to maybe have to go to prison because he was preaching the gospel to truckers when they were protesting, my friend Andy Stanley is out to lunch. I feel sorry for the people that are under the influence of voices like that. The Apostle Paul said that I don't run aimlessly. I don't fight aimlessly. I fight in order to score points. And as an athlete, I keep my body under. All the metaphors of Paul were about being in it to win it. He was in it to win the crown of God's approval for a job well done. Our job in America is to preserve the religious liberty and the truth that God has given this country before the lights go out. And if we do not occupy till he comes, the territory will be occupied by something 7 times worse: perversion, communism, Marxism. Death is going to be in our future.